This is not the same craving you get when you haven't had a chocolate bar and decide you want one. And you're just not going to be satisfied till you have some chocolate. Now, when that happens, you haven't had any chocolate, you go, you get a Hershey bar, you eat it, you're good. You don't have to eat 10 Hershey bars. This phenomenon of craving doesn't start until that substance enters your body. And once it does, there is not an amount of alcohol on the planet to make you say, no thanks, I've had enough. Now, you might pass out, fall out, get taken out, but you're not just going to stop. Hi, welcome to Demon Starver. Today, we're going to do a book study. I feel like reading. Now, remember, the Alcoholics Anonymous book was written back in 1939. So I've got my Alcoholics Anonymous big book, but for those of you who don't have one, so you can't read along, guess what? I have it on an app. Yeah. There's no excuses. Today, we're going to go straight to the doctor's opinion. I love the doctor's opinion. I'm going to go through it like I would with a sponsee and hopefully be able to explain and make suggestions as we go. We of Alcoholics Anonymous believe that the reader will be interested in the medical estimate of the plan of recovery described in this book. Now, when they say we, what they meant was the first 100 members of Alcoholics Anonymous. They, along with Bill Wilson, got together and wrote the book. And at that time, they had a pretty good success rate because they were hardcore, they did what they were told, and they were trying to save their lives. Remember, this book was written by professional white men for professional white men. So if you hear things in it that you think don't relate to you, get over it. Think about the feelings, the pain, the suffering, and you're going to see the similarities. Back then, if you were an alcoholic, there was no treatment. There was no rehabilitation. There was no Alcoholics Anonymous. They would think you were crazy and they would stick you in an asylum. So here we go. We of Alcoholics Anonymous believe that the reader will be interested in the medical estimate of the plan of recovery described in this book. Convincing testimony must surely come from the medical men who have had experience with the sufferings of our members and have witnessed our return to health. A well-known doctor, chief physician at a nationally prominent hospital specializing in alcoholism and drug addiction, gave Alcoholics Anonymous this letter. This was Dr. Silkworth from Towns Hospital in New York. To whom it may concern. I have specialized in the treatment of alcoholism for many years. In late 1934, I attended a patient who, though he had been a competent businessman of good earning capacity, was an alcoholic of a type I had come to regard as hopeless. Now he's talking about Bill Wilson, who wrote the big book. In the course of his third treatment, he acquired certain ideas concerning a possible means of recovery. As part of his rehabilitation, he commenced to present his conceptions to other alcoholics and pressing upon them that they must do likewise with still others. This has become the basis of a rapidly growing fellowship of these men and their families. This man and over 100 others appear to have recovered. Now, what does recover mean? It means back to health, back to sanity. And if you want what I have, you got to do what I did to get what I got. I personally know scores of cases who were the type with whom other methods had failed completely. Does that sound familiar? These facts appear to be of extreme medical importance. Because of the extraordinary possibility of rapid growth inherent in this group, they may mark a new epoch in the annals of alcoholism. These men may well have a remedy for thousands of such situations. You may rely absolutely on anything they say about themselves. Very truly yours, William D. Silkworth, MD. Now that is a big deal. That this doctor, this man of science, is saying that these people in this program, you can count on them. You can rely on them. You can trust what they have to say. Now I ask you, if you are in the throes of addiction, if your demon is strong, when's the last time somebody felt like that about you? Where you were reliable and trustable and hey, you can believe whatever they have to say. The physician who, at our request, gave us this letter has been kind enough to enlarge upon his views in another statement which follows. In this statement, he confirms that we who have suffered alcoholic torture must believe that the body of the alcoholic is quite as abnormal as his mind. It did not satisfy us to be told we could not control our drinking just because we were maladjusted to life, that we were in full flight from reality, or were outright mental defectives. They used to put us in insane asylums. These things were true to some extent, in fact, to a considerable extent with some of us. But we are sure that our bodies were sickened as well. In our belief, any picture of the alcoholic which leaves out this physical factor is incomplete. The doctor's theory that we have an allergy to alcohol interests us. As laymen, our opinion as to its soundness may, of course, mean little. What do we know? We're not doctors. We're just have lived experience. But as ex-problem drinkers, we can say that his explanation makes good sense. It explains many things for which we cannot otherwise account. So I'm an alcoholic. I'll always be an alcoholic. To think that I'm not an alcoholic would mean that I could someday drink without it becoming a problem. That's simply not true. So I am an ex-problem drinker, but I am still an alcoholic. Though we work out our solutions on the spiritual as well as the altruistic plane, we favor hospitalization for the alcoholic who is very jittery or befogged. That's what I call twitchy. I work in a treatment center. People come in and they're still twitchy. You can't do anything with them till they're done being twitchy. More often than not, it is imperative that a man's brain be cleared before he is approached, as he has then a better chance of understanding any what we have to offer. The doctor writes, the subjects presented in this book seems to be of a paramount importance to those afflicted with alcoholic addiction. By paramount, he means life or death. I say this after many years' experience as medical director of one of the oldest hospitals in the country treating alcoholic and drug addiction, and this was back in 1939. There was, therefore, a sense of real satisfaction when I was asked to contribute a few words on a subject which is covered in such masterly detail in these pages. We doctors have realized for a long time that some form of moral psychology was of urgent importance to alcoholics. Moral psychology, psychic change, spiritual experience, whatever you want to call it. But its application presented difficulties beyond our conception. What with our ultramodern standards, back in 1939, our scientific approach to everything, we are perhaps not well equipped to apply the powers of good that lie outside our synthetic knowledge. Now he's talking about God. He's talking about higher power. But because he's a doctor, he's a man of science, he really can't say that. Many years ago, one of the leading contributors to this book came under our care in this hospital, and while here, he acquired some ideas which he put into practical application at once. That was Bill Wilson having his lightning bolt spiritual awakening. Later, he requested the privilege of being allowed to tell his story to other patients here, and with some misgiving, we consented. Why not? Nothing else is working. The cases we have followed through have been most interesting. In fact, many of them are amazing. The unselfishness of these men as we have come to know them, the entire absence of profit motive, and their community spirit is indeed inspiring to one who has labored long and wearily in this alcoholic field. You're looking for that in a sponsor, somebody that wants to help you, and they don't want anything in return. They believe in themselves, and still more in the power that is capitalized power. You see a capital letter in the book? They're talking about God. And still more in the power which pulls chronic alcoholics back from the gates of death. Of course, an alcoholic ought to be freed from his physical craving for liquor, and this often requires a definite hospital procedure before psychological measures can be of maximum benefit. If you're twitchy, you can't think straight, you can't understand what's being said to you. We believe, and so suggested a few years ago, that the action of alcohol on these chronic alcoholics is a manifestation of an allergy, that the phenomenon of craving is limited to this class and never occurs in the average temperate drinker. Now, when we talk about the phenomenon of craving, this is not the same craving you get when you haven't had a chocolate bar and decide you want one. And you're just not going to be satisfied till you have some chocolate. Now, when that happens, you haven't had any chocolate, you go, you get a Hershey bar, you eat it, you're good. You don't have to eat 10 Hershey bars. This phenomenon of craving doesn't start until that substance enters your body. And once it does, there is not an amount of alcohol on the planet to make you say, no thanks, I've had enough. Now you might pass out, fall out, get taken out, but you're not just going to stop. These allergic types can never safely use alcohol in any form at all. And once having formed the habit and found they cannot break it, once having lost their self-confidence, their reliance upon things human, their problems pile up on them and become astonishingly difficult to solve. That sound familiar to anybody? Let me know in the comments. Frothy emotional appeal seldom suffices. The message which can interest and hold these alcoholic people must have depth and weight. In nearly all cases, their ideals must be grounded in a power greater than themselves if they are to recreate their lives. If any feel that as psychiatrists directing a hospital for alcoholics, we appear somewhat sentimental, let them stand with us a while on the firing line. See the tragedies, the despairing wives, the little children. Let the solving of these problems become a part of their daily work and even of their sleeping moments, and the most cynical will not wonder that we have accepted and encouraged this movement. I got goosebumps reading that. We feel, after many years of experience, that we have found nothing which has contributed more to the rehabilitation of these men than the altruistic movement now growing up among them. Men and women drink essentially because they like the effect produced by alcohol. Read that again. Men and women essentially drink because they like the effect produced by alcohol. The sensation is so elusive that while they admit it is injurious, they cannot, after a time, differentiate the true from the false. To them, their alcoholic life seems the only normal one. They are restless, irritable, and discontented until they can again experience the same sense of ease and comfort which comes at once by taking a few drinks. Drinks which they see others taking with impunity. Other people can drink without it tasting like crack and feeling like handcuffs by the end of the night. Why can't we? After they have succumbed to the desire again, as so many do, and the phenomenon of craving develops, they pass through the well-known stages of a spree, emerging remorseful, with a firm resolution not to drink again. This is repeated over and over, and unless this person can experience an entire psychic change, there is very little hope of recovery. On the other hand, and strange as this may seem, to those who do not understand, once a psychic change has occurred, the very same person who seemed doomed, who had so many problems he despaired of ever solving them, suddenly he finds himself easily able to control his desire for alcohol. The only effort necessary being that required to follow a few simple rules. Hello, the 12 steps. Men have cried out to me in sincere and despairing appeal. Doctor, I cannot go on like this. I have everything to live for. I must stop, but I cannot. You must help me. Faced with this problem, if a doctor is honest with himself, he must sometimes feel his own inadequacies. Although he's given all that is in him, it often is not enough. One feels that something more than human power is needed to produce the essential psychic change. Though the aggregate of recoveries resulting from psychiatric effort is considerable. Now, what did I just say? People that go to psychiatrists, get off the booze, get their life together. There's a big chunk of people that do it that way. Yay! Doesn't work for everybody. We physicians must admit we have made little impression upon the problem as a whole. So that small percentage that gets it done by just going to a psychiatrist, that's nothing compared to the millions of people that have this problem. Many types do not respond to the ordinary psychological approach. I do not hold with those who believe that alcoholism is entirely a problem of mental control. I have had many men who had, for example, worked a period of months on some problem or business deal which was to be settled on a certain date favorably to them. They took a drink a day or so prior to the date, and then the phenomenon of craving at once became paramount, more important than anything else. It became paramount to all other interest, so that the important appointment was not met. These men were not drinking to escape. They were drinking to overcome a craving beyond their mental control. It is a craving that cannot be satisfied. They weren't drinking to get drunk. They weren't drinking to have a good time. They weren't drinking for fun. They were drinking because the demon disguised as a disease had come in and taken away their power of choice. There are many situations which arise out of the phenomenon of craving which cause men to make the supreme sacrifice rather than continue to fight. You heard me. There are many situations that happen because of this demon that make men unalive themselves. The classification of alcoholics seems most difficult, and in much detail is outside the scope of this book. There are, of course, the psychopaths who are emotionally unstable. We are all familiar with this type. They are always going on the wagon for keeps. They are over-remorseful and make many resolutions, but never a decision. There's the type of man who is unwilling to admit that he cannot take a drink. He plans various ways of drinking. He changes his brand or his environment. There is the type who always believes that after being entirely free from alcohol for a period of time, he can take a drink without danger. There is the manic depressive type, who is perhaps the least understood by his friends, and about whom a whole chapter could be written. Then there are types entirely normal in every respect except in the effect alcohol has upon them. They are often able, intelligent, friendly people. All these and many others have one symptom in common. They cannot start drinking without developing the phenomenon of craving. This phenomenon, as we have suggested, may be the manifestation of an allergy which differentiates these people and sets them apart as a distinct entity. But what is an allergy? It's an abnormal reaction to a common substance, right? That's all an allergy is. We do not react normally to this common substance. Once we start, we can't stop. That's the phenomenon of craving. It has never been, by any treatment with which we are familiar, permanently eradicated. The only relief we have to suggest is entire abstinence. Now, what I would suggest, if you have the book or get the app, go back over those last couple of pages I just read that say the different types of alcoholic and write down for yourself or for your sponsor which one of those types you think you are. Now, I know for me, at different times of my life, I marked every single one of those types. Not at the same time, but there throughout the course of my drinking days, I could spot those descriptions in myself, every single one of them, at one point or another. Let's see. The only relief we have to suggest is entire abstinence. This immediately precipitates us into a seething cauldron of debate. Much has been written pro and con, but among physicians, the general opinion seems to be that most chronic alcoholics are doomed. They just shuffle them off into an asylum and lock them up. What is the solution? Perhaps I can best answer this by relating one of my experiences. About 1 year prior to this experience, a man was brought in to be treated for chronic alcoholism. He had but partially recovered from a gastric hemorrhage and seemed to a case of pathological mental deterioration. So his body and his mind just soaked. He had lost everything worthwhile in life and was only living, one might say, to drink. He frankly admitted and believed that for him there was no hope. Following the elimination of alcohol, there was found to be no permanent brain injury. So they detoxed him. They got the alcohol out of his system, did all the testing that they do. Okay, he's not wet-brained. He'll be all right. If he stops drinking, he'll be all right. He accepted the plan outlined in this book. 1 year later, he called to see me, and I experienced a very strange sensation. I knew the man by name and partly recognized his features. But there, all resemblance ended. From a trembling, despairing, nervous wreck had emerged a man brimming over with self-reliance and contentment. I talked with him for some time, but was not able to bring myself to feel that I had known him before. To me, he was a stranger, and so he left me. A long time has passed with no return to alcohol. When I need a mental uplift, I often think of another case brought in by a physician prominent in New York. The patient had made his own diagnosis and decided his situation hopeless, had hidden in a deserted barn determined to die. He was rescued by a searching party and in desperate condition brought to me. Following his physical rehabilitation, he had a talk with me in which he frankly stated he thought the treatment a waste of effort, unless I could assure him, which no one ever had, that in the future he would have the willpower to resist the impulse to drink. His alcoholic problem was so complex and his depression so great that we felt his only hope would be through what we then called moral psychology, and we doubted if even that would have any effect. However, he did become sold on the ideas contained in this book. He had not had a drink for a great many years. I see him now and then, and he is a fine specimen of manhood as one could wish to meet. I earnestly advise every alcoholic to read this book through, and though perhaps he came to scoff, he may remain to pray. William D. Silkworth, M.D. Moral psychology, psychic change, spiritual awakening. Man can't do it. And you're not going to have the willpower to not drink. That's why you get connection with your higher power, because your higher power can do what you can't do. God will do for you what you cannot do for yourself. So if you read this book and you follow its instructions and you do it fearlessly and thoroughly, you will not relapse. If you don't, you might. Hey, that's it for today. Love everybody. Let God sort them out. You'll be strong. Thanks for coming.